The scene of Vanda Academy unfolds amidst resounding bells as a solemn announcement is made. The valedictorian of Vanda Academy, Michael Fox, steps forward. A young man steps out under the gaze of hundreds of pairs of eyes. Hello everyone, I am Michael Fox, a graduate of the second class of Vanda Academy. Meanwhile, another young man is sitting on a tree branch outside the academy grounds. He looks down at the ceremony, muttering, unbelievable. The kid who used to stutter, just saying hello, is now speaking in front of 1,000 people. From here, he just looks like a talking white cotton ball. But in reality, no one has white hair like that, except for you, Michael. You've grown up so much, Michael, though to be honest, I couldn't teach you anything of substance as your homeroom teacher. Those 3 years were filled with crazy events. I had to try my best to live up to the role of a side character in a fantasy novel. But now the main quest is complete. Goodbye to 3 years of living inside a character's shell. I can finally start a peaceful life. But then Michael Fox says, I owe all of this to one person, the one who deserves to be called a teacher, a true guide, Professor Cris. At that very moment, Cris Doton, our protagonist, felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. He exclaims, what, my name? Michael continues, if I hadn't met you, sir, I wouldn't be who I am today. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I was weak and useless, and for always guiding me. I understand you have your reasons for not being able to stay at the academy anymore. But please give me the chance to repay you. I will follow you for the rest of my life. Cris Doton is genuinely startled. No. You read the main character. Your story has only just begun. The whole world is waiting for you. Do you have any idea how many scouts have come here just to recruit you? Michael says again, it's not just me, it's all of us who were trained by you. We have gathered here for one purpose, and that is to follow Professor Cris Doton. All 5 of us pledge our loyalty to you, Professor Cris. Cris is speechless. Wait a minute, what is this situation? How did it turn out like this? I'm just an ordinary, powerless person from another world. I don't even know how to cast a basic spell. Did I accidentally mess up the character settings? Cris recounts the story of how it all began. It all started before I became a teacher at Vanda Academy. Right after that car accident, as my consciousness faded, something suddenly appeared before my eyes. A system window popped up in front of me, displaying the main quest, Wish of the Earth God. A new life, accept quest, yes or no. Cris stared at the system window, thinking in shock, what the hell is this? Am I about to die? But when I saw those words, I thought I couldn't die here. My life had just begun. In that moment, I chose to live, without hesitation. I pressed the yes button, and right after that, his eyes opened to a new world. Inside a novel, he shot up in a panic. In front of him was a young lady. Overjoyed that Cris Doton had woken up, he looked around in confusion. Wait, can't she see the system window? But something else stunned him even more. The name Cris Doton. The girl said, here is your card. This is your ed. Cris looked at the ed, which clearly read Cris Doton, new teacher at Vanda Academy. He was bewildered. A new teacher at Vanda Academy. What the heck is going on? This isn't Japanese. But why can I read and understand it? The girl continued, today was supposed to be your first day. The entrance ceremony is already over. But due to the train accident, the academy will be understanding. The train accident already happened. He turned to the woman and said, excuse me, may I borrow a mirror? Then a system window appeared before him, another window opening up. Main quest, Wish of the Earth God, 1 of 1, welcome. You have been reincarnated as Cris Doton, a new teacher at Vanda Academy. You will spend the next 3 years completing quests as Cris Doton. Cris Doton thought, I've been reincarnated. No wonder those old-fashioned lines of dialogue made so much sense. And isn't Vanda Academy from that fantasy novel I once read for fun? The Strongest Demon King's Hero. The story of a weak protagonist who awakens his demon lineage, wipes out enemies with overpowered skills, and ends up conquering the world with a classic harem. But that was a long time ago. I don't even remember how many chapters I read. Besides, who the heck is Cris Doton? Cris stared intently at the system window. A teacher must have a disciple. Go to the main gate of Vanda Academy, within the specified time. Reward a map of Vanda Academy. 1 month's salary. Time remaining until midnight. Penalty, death. Cris Doton was shocked to see the penalty. He was stunned and punched the system window, shouting, the penalty is death. I just died, and now you're telling me to die again if I fail. The woman standing next to him was shocked, because she couldn't see the system window, and didn't understand what was happening. Said Cris, you need to rest. Wait, are you shouting into thin air? The next day, Cris Doton left the hospital to go to the academy, muttering to himself as he walked, I forced them to discharge me early, but my body still hurts. I'm just starting as a teacher, and I'm flat broke. What a tragedy. Half of my savings were spent at that clinic so far. All I've figured out is that the currency here is gold and the academy is a half-day's walk away. But who is Cris Doton anyway? But wait, I've always wanted to try this. Status window open. Cris Doton began to look at his status window. Reputation none, nickname reclusive mage, magic attributus rank crystal, mana strength F rank, condition good agility F rank, like a snail, defense F rank like wet paper, skills illegal, player cannot use skills. Cris was a bit surprised and said, what, 3 words and no skills? Well, I can live with bad stats. But being unable to use magic is illegal. I've been reincarnated with a trash build, a really bad one. In this world, only monsters can't use magic. And I'm a teacher at the continent's top academy. This isn't just bad, it's a death sentence. Maybe I should run away. In this situation, my last words will probably be, I can't use magic, but I'm not a monster. But Cris looked at the countdown timer. Only 20 hours left. Cris saw the remaining time. 3 hours, 52 minutes, and 48 seconds. He sighed, I get it, I don't have time for this. This is my second chance at life. With a little luck, my reputation is listed as reclusive mage, and I also have experience. I was once reported in a game for role-playing too realistically. That means I'm good at role-playing, right? So now I'll play the role of a mysterious, super powerful mage who never shows his true strength for the next 3 years. I'll survive by pretending to be a true badass. And then we see the gate of Vanda Academy. A stone statue stands guard in front, looking very bored. The entrance ceremony was last week, so no one is coming now. But then it sensed something dangerous. The sense of danger made the statue break out in a cold sweat. When it looked ahead, it saw a terrifying killing intent approaching from our main character. The statue sweated when it saw that, sensing an extremely dangerous aura emanating from Cris Doton, trembling as it thought, who in the world is that? That immense amount of mana. He must be a teacher. I heard the new teacher was in a train accident. It's normal for academy teachers to be as strong as monsters. The power he possesses. No, this isn't just monstrous power anymore. It's far beyond anything a human could imagine. The scar on his forehead, his black hair like the mane of a wild beast, his skin as pale as the cold moonlight, his eyes as deep as the dark night. He stood there like a phantom stepping out of a nightmare. This was death. Death incarnate in human form. Those black and red eyes had witnessed countless tragic ends. They had witnessed so many deaths. Behind him was an endless void, a heavy, suffocating emptiness. Cris Doton stopped in front of that monster and said clearly, sending a small stone like you to guard the gate is an insult to the Academy's honor. The monster was terrified but still managed to ask the main character, you there, state your name and purpose for coming here. Its voice trembled, but it tried to sound stern. The main character gave a meaningful smile. The new teacher, Cris Doton, turned and ordered with a stern face, then opened the gate. Then he walked into the academy, his steps heavy. But in reality, Cris Doton was still trembling inside. Phew, I almost died for real. Lucky I made it in time. But this type of character is pretty cool. Isn't it? A lazy ultimate teacher who dozes off in front of his students all day instead of teaching. But the truth is, he was once a battle-hardened warrior. Full of experience. Always giving sharp, profound advice to the main character. That's what a true teacher is. Cris once lost a loved one due to his own mistake. He fell into an abyss of despair until the Academy's headmaster appeared. Since then, he has reluctantly come here. Most importantly, he still hasn't overcome that psychological trauma. Refusing to take on any more students, however, his arrogance remained. You weaklings aren't worthy of my teaching. You want to see my magic? Then get stronger first. Cris Doton was so lost in thought that he didn't notice the blood dripping down. When he saw the blood, he was startled. Could the wound from that day's accident have reopened? Just then, a wave of pain and dizziness washed over him. Then the system appeared before his eyes again. Only the system window lit up. Mission complete. You have received the Vanda Academy map 1 out of 1. Cris Doton yelled, are you kidding me? Forget the map. Give me something to heal myself. And then he couldn't even make it to the infirmary. A student suddenly appeared behind him, asking him, sir, are you okay? Cris Doton turned to see the student take another step forward and continue. Whoa, you re-bleeding, are you hurt? Looking closely at the boy, Cris Doton thought to himself, the scales on his cheek, this kid, he has a cursed power. He's the main character of this story, Michael Foxon. He hasn't awakened his power yet, his hair is still brown, and he has an awkward and clumsy demeanor. With no sign of the overwhelming power he'll have later. Still, I can't let my guard down. I have to stick to the plan. Continue playing the role of the supremely lazy teacher. Cris Doton asked, why are you still here? Isn't first period still in session? Are you a new student? Why are you at the training grounds at this hour? Michael Fox trembled slightly but still answered, I couldn't keep up with the class. So the teacher told me not to bother coming to the training grounds anymore. Cris Doton thought to himself, I can't blame them. Right now he probably only knows how to cast a low-level fireball. The gap between him and the others is too wide, but no matter what, a teacher shouldn't treat a student like that. Cris Doton muttered, "What a bastard." Michael Fox heard him, his face turning pale with fear, not knowing that from this moment, their fates were becoming intertwined. He thought that Cris had said all that for his sake, and his eyes began to well up with tears. He quietly apologized to Cris Doton, but Cris was stunned, thinking to himself, "Wait a minute, I didn't even say anything to you, hold on. Are you crying?" Cris Doton muttered, "What a pain, what class are you in?" At the same time, he thought, "This is bad, I need to get him back to class quickly." Once again, the system window appeared before Cris. Main quest: Will of the Earth God 2 of 1. Today is your exciting first day as the new homeroom teacher of Class X. Get to class on time and conduct your first lesson. Reward Vanda Academy map for the owner of the Happy Monkey keychain. Penalty death. Time remaining 9 minutes and 48 seconds. Cris Doton thought to himself, even with a map, I wouldn't know which way to go, but based on everything that's happened so far, this must be my class. Just then, Michael Fox said with a tremble, I'm in Class X, please spare my life." Cris Doton looked at him and coldly ordered him to lead the way. Michael immediately replied, "Yes." Cris glared at him with a gaze as sharp as a knife, his voice low and cold. "I said lead the way, did I stutter?" Michael was so scared he wanted to cry. A moment later, Cris Doton had lifted Michael Fox onto his shoulder and carried him to class just like that. When they arrived, he gently set him down. Michael walked into the classroom, trembling. In front of him were 2 other students. They both called out in unison, "Michael, don't be so jumpy. You always make a scene when you come in. Are you trying to get attention? Come on in. And sit down, oh my god!" At that moment, Cris Doton walked in the classroom. Immediately, the entire class felt a strange shift in the air, and all the whispering stopped, as if an absolute silence had swallowed the room. Cris walked straight to the podium, his eyes sweeping across the class before he coldly uttered a sentence. "Every single one of you is trash. This is the bunch I'm supposed to teach. Vanda, are you insane?" His words caused the students to start murmuring. "Wait, Vanda, isn't that the headmaster's name? But who is that guy? And his head is bleeding." A student raised his hand and said, "Excuse me, but who are you? Outsiders aren't allowed in this area." That student's name was Nico Tet, the top student of Class X. Cris looked at him and thought, Nika, Michael's friend, if I remember correctly. Nico Tet added, "Oh, right, are you the teacher who was late because of that accident? No wonder you re-bleeding." Cris cut him off, "Shut up," but inwardly, he thought, I just came at the wrong time. Don't bring it up again, it's so embarrassing. I've already made my grand entrance. Now I actually have to teach. In these reincarnation stories, you're supposed to get some pre-existing knowledge. So why don't I know anything? I guess I'll just have to wing it." He stood up from the square chair on the podium, took some chalk and wrote in large letters on the board, "Self-study." Cris thought to himself, I'll just play it by ear, as long as I have the right attitude. Michael Fox's eyes widened in astonishment. He saw Cris telling the whole class, "You will now have self-study." Then, he casually lay back on the teacher's chair and started sleeping right there. Inside, Cris was still screaming, "This is so humiliating. But I have to act tougher now. I will just act as if they aren't even worthy of my lecture." A few students whispered, "Is he really sleeping? For real, making us self-study on the very first day? That's insane." Cris Doton completely agreed in his heart, wondering if this could even be considered a class. Just then, a girl shot up from her seat and shouted, "Professor Cris, if this is some kind of joke, please stop. It's truly offensive. You didn't even show up for the opening ceremony. How dare you insult the sacred education of Vanda Academy like this?" Hearing that voice, Cris immediately knew her name was Angelina, a candidate for the female lead. Cris Doton thought to himself, Angelina Syrup, one of the heroine candidates. They call her the Ice Princess. If I remember correctly, on the surface, she's the daughter of a duke, at least outwardly. Most of the students here are nobles. I get that, but for her, this must be really suffocating. This could cause trouble later. But as Cris, this is all I can say for now. I know about Angelina's tragic past, and just thinking about it breaks my heart. But then, Cris Doton suddenly spoke to Angelina in a firm voice. "If you were not satisfied, then leave." Angelina was stunned. Cris Doton continued, "Didn't you hear me? I said if you were not satisfied, then get out." But inside, Cris Doton thought, "I'm sorry, Angelina." Angelina retorted, "What did you just say?" Cris Doton replied, "Don't make me repeat myself. If you don't like my class, you're welcome to leave." But he thought to himself, "I'm sorry, Angelina. Forgive me." He was a teacher who could only say such things to his student. Angelina started grinding her teeth in anger and said, "I have no interest in learning anything from someone like you." Michael Fox tried to stop her. "Angelina, are you really going to skip class over this?" Angelina turned to Michael and said, "With his abilities, I doubt he can teach anyone anything. I don't have time to waste on a useless teacher." Hearing Angelina's words, many other students also began to leave the classroom. Cris Doton watched the students gradually walk out. He thought, father, I knew this would happen. They were all proud nobles. I wonder how many will be left in the end. I've prepared myself for this, but what if I get fired? I can only trust the principal. Then a system window appeared. Mission complete. New map unlocked. Vanda Academy 2 out of 4. Reward monkey keychain. Cris sighed. Thanks to crypto, at least I survived this time. What a coincidence. Only the main characters are left. Michael, the protagonist Nick Toot, an honor student, and the potential heroines surrounding the male lead. The girl with the twin buns is Duncy. The other girl is Bio, the healer. There's one more who hasn't appeared yet. I'll introduce her later. Now it's time to act like a real teacher and say something profound. Cris Doton stood up and said, if you teach magic half-heartedly, someone will die. Hearing those words, the ears of all the remaining students perked up, and everyone was stunned. Cris Doton continued. That's why Vanda Academy is a place that trains killers. Giving a deadly weapon to someone who can't even control their own mana means the one who dies won't be them, but someone else. Calling it an accident or a mistake is just sugarcoating a dark reality. Do you have the resolve to bear that responsibility? But all the students remained silent. No one said a word. Then Cris quietly left. After a moment, Cris Doton stepped out of the classroom, leaned against the wall, and burst out laughing. I think my lifespan just got shortened by 10 years. Creating a character whose life depends on your own performance is a whole other level. I need to adapt to this reality quickly. Oh right, what on earth is this monkey keychain I just got? Cris Doton held a small monkey-shaped keychain in his hand, smiling brightly when he saw it. What the heck is this? It's so cute. I think it's really adorable. But if Cris carries this around, it'll completely ruin his image. I wonder if it has any effects. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of him. Equip item, monkey keychain. Do you want to equip it? Note, once equipped, it cannot be removed for 5 minutes. Please choose carefully. Cris Doton frowned. So I have to equip to know its effect. Well, I might as well see what it does. You have equipped the monkey keychain. Upon equipping, agility increased 1 rank from F Snail to E, Big Brother Snail. Chris's face lit up, a whole rank increase in speed. This is definitely a cheat item. I just need to hide it under my clothes. Higher speed means better attacks and better evasion. The system continued. Furthermore, your rapid speaking ability will increase. Cris was startled by the system's strange final words but tried to remain calm. Hold on, what did the system just say? Are you calling me a monkey? Cris narrowed his eyes. I would never say such a thing. A girl watching all of Cris Doton's actions from behind was somewhat surprised. She called out softly, Professor Cris Doton. Cris turned his head, and upon seeing her, he asked, why are you here? Angelina stood frozen, unable to move. Cris thought to himself, damn it, I should have used an invisibility spell sooner. Angelina thought, the moment that death-like gaze met mine, my mouth opened reflexively. No excuse could make this person forgive me. Even the title of the Seraph family would be useless. I know this type of person. One who only believes in their own strength and looks down on everyone else. An arrogant genius. That contemptuous gaze. I've seen it far too many times in my life. He didn't check my pockets. Nor did he tie me up or prevent me from running. Is this what they call silent pressure? Angelina said softly, you saw, didn't you? That I was smoking, I won't deny it. I know it was wrong. I'm sorry, and I will accept any punishment. She thought, perhaps getting caught by him is actually a good thing. He would never let me off the hook anyway. If he says I'm unworthy of inheriting anything and completely rejects me, then maybe I can give it all up and be free. Cris gently touched her forehead, whispering how pitiful. Angelina was confused. What is this? That gaze isn't reproachful or angry. It's like the gaze of someone who has seen others suffer and meet tragic ends. Trying to numb the pain with foolish and impulsive actions is a short-sighted behavior. No matter how strong one is, the past cannot be undone. That regret, seeing yourself in these repeating moments, you read just like me, you were human too. Cris began to walk away, and Angelina was startled to see the monkey keychain dangling from his side. That monkey doll didn't suit his image at all. Perhaps it's a gift from someone important or a memento. I'm sorry for bringing up something painful and for my rude behavior. Even though I'm just an immature kid, Cris thought, hey now, trying to get in trouble by breaking the academy's no smoking rule doesn't suit her personality at all. Wait, does she realize her speech is getting distorted? A moment later, Angelina returned to the classroom and sat down. Cris was surprised to see her back. Angelina stammered, don't get the wrong idea. I'm just curious about Belfia's recovery magic. Nick too was excited, so Class X has me, Nick Toot, Michael, Don Bayo, and Angelina too. We've pretty much formed an elite squad. So cool, Cris. No, Dunks thought to herself, while all the other students requested to transfer. Dunks said, I just want to show those extras our true abilities. Right, Michael? Cris Doton thought to himself, that's Donkse for you, a classic petty villainess. Bio spoke up, Donk6, stop teasing Michael. The professor is about to start. Look at the board, Professor. What are we learning today? Cris Doton clicked his tongue. Is it finally time for a real class? If only I could skip this, he said to the students. Today's class will be field training. At that moment, the system's voice echoed in Chris's head. Main quest. Will of the Earth God, 1/3, mission first trail, lead the Class X students to the Venus Plains and eliminate the monsters. Completing all objectives within the time limit. Reward Vanda map 3/4, reset sword, and you know the penalty: monsters eliminated 0 out of 50, time remaining 24 hours. A while later, a picturesque scene unfolded before their eyes. The teleportation circle began to open, and Cris Doton and his students stepped out from the magical light. Angelina looked around and said, "The Venus Plains, so this is our field training location." Nicktoot looked at Cris Doton eagerly, his eyes sparkling. He exclaimed, "Professor, we haven't even received our weapons, and you've already used teleportation magic." But Cris Doton thought to himself, "No, that wasn't my doing. We were just in the classroom and suddenly we re-hear. What in the world is going on? Spatial magic isn't something students can use." Then Dansa looked above Professor Cris Doton's head and said, "Wait a minute, there's a shadow above the professor's head." The students started whispering, "Could someone else have summoned us here?" A panicked student screamed, "It's a horned rabbit." A swarm of horned rabbits appeared behind Cris Doton, and the system announced, "Teleportation by a third party has been confirmed. You have arrived at the designated location." Cris Doton thought to himself, "We were brought here by another force." Dunks shouted loudly, "It's a horned rabbit." Angelina panicked, "Professor, behind you is a boss monster." Cris Doton turned around, his heart pounding and his face pale as he faced the boss. "Am I going to die?" The system continued to report, 23 hours remaining. So far, you have not defeated any of the 50 monsters. In front of Cris Doton were 2 dangerous monsters, and behind him was a massive boss. Cris Doton trembled as he thought, "I have to stay calm. I am Cris Doton." In this situation, what would he do? For someone like him, this isn't even a warm-up. He would definitely use this to test the students' abilities. Then Cris Doton shouted, "Students, have you forgotten why we re-here?" Angelina was surprised. "What? No way. Are you serious? You were making us train in a situation like this?" But Nicktoot laughed loudly. "I get it. That means you'll handle the boss. And we'll take care of the small fry, right?" Cris Doton was secretly pleased. "You were brilliant, saving my image by misunderstanding perfectly," Dunix said. "So it's our job to clean up the minions." Angelina looked at Cris Doton with a fearful expression, but she still spoke up. "I understand. I trust that you would never let us face danger without a plan." Angelina drew her spear, stepped forward, held her fighting stance, and began to charge at the monster. Seeing this, Belle immediately said, "Let me provide support from the rear. If anyone gets injured, I will heal them right away." Michael Fen began to gather fire energy in his hands, preparing to cast a fire spell. Cris Doton smiled as he watched the students begin to fight. Excellent. Just like a main character in his party, everything was progressing well. Gradually the group of students began to defeat more monsters, but then a drop of drool from a small monster fell onto Cris Doton's shoulder. The sensation startled Cris Doton. He turned around and found a 3-horned rabbit in front of him. Cris Doton panicked a little when he saw it. "That's right, I forgot it was here too. Honestly, it would be better to pass out before feeling the pain." But then he reconsidered. "I can't give up now, even if I'm eaten alive. There's still a chance of survival. If I fail this mission, I'll definitely die, so the smartest choice is to fight." Michael Fox saw Cris Doton being attacked and swallowed whole by the boss monster. The sight left Michael stunned. He immediately rushed forward to save the professor, but thoughts echoed in his mind. "Someone died right in front of me again. Is it because I'm weak? Because I'm useless and can't even fight a single monster? This is my fault." Just then, Belle ran over to calm Michael down. But Michael screamed, "Get away!" "Belle, the professor is still in there." Belle held Michael tightly. "It's too late. The professor sacrificed himself to protect us. Monsters that big slow down after they've eaten their fill." But Michael yelled, "No, you wrong. Belle, you good at healing, right? With your abilities, maybe you can still save him." But Belle shook his head. "I'm sorry, Michael." Michael began to recall old memories of when he had stopped Cris Doton and said, "I know I have no right to say this, but I want to become stronger, strong enough to carry everything on my shoulders. If I can do that, I'm willing to trade everything for it." Michael wondered, he'll probably just laugh at me like always, right? But at that time, Cris Doton just smiled and said, "You will become strong." Michael choked up as he remembered and said, "You were the only one who ever said that to me. No one else ever believed in me." Donex shouted, "We have to fight our way out of here. Waiting is just a waste of time." Michael clenched his fists. "That's why, today, I will give it my all. Everyone, people like you are the true symbols of strength. As for me, I'm just a burden. I should have been the one who was swallowed." Michael Fox stood silently amidst the rubble, his empty eyes staring into the void. Belle was still saying something, perhaps words of comfort or a new plan. But it all vanished into the somber echo in Michael's head. He couldn't hear anything anymore. Tears silently rolled down his cheeks, and a single thought echoed in his mind. It wasn't the professor, nor was it his mother, who should have died then. A deep, muffled voice, familiar yet distorted, echoed from the deepest recesses of his mind. It should have been you, right? You crave power, after all, Michael. If so, then reach out your hand, let's become one. Father. That's right, it is I. The demon inside Michael Fox, the long-sealed dark entity, was gradually taking over his mind, every thought twisted, every memory perverted. But then something held him back. In that moment, Michael froze, his eyes wavering. He heard another sound. Not from the darkness, not from himself. A voice rang out clear and strong amidst the tense atmosphere, cutting through the night. Everyone. Stop right there. The protagonist emerged from the smoke and dust, his body covered in blood, panting heavily. He had just killed the alpha monster, his fierce gaze sweeping over everyone. What do you all think you're redoing? Running away. Can't you see the monsters are still swarming in? He turned towards Cris Doton and the injured students, his eyes sharp and cold. Cris Doton and his students had already taken down 27 out of 50 of them. The mission was only halfway done. Toot was overjoyed to see Cris was still alive. She beamed and said, "Just as I thought, Professor, you re-alive. You let yourself get swallowed on purpose to attack from the inside, right?" Cris thought to himself, not a chance, but appreciated the sentiment. Then he crossed his arms, glanced at her, and said, "You were being too loud. I already told you today was a field training session. You forgot the objective and were even about to run away." Hearing Chris's words, Nick Toot became flustered, then clenched her fists and stepped forward to face the rabbit monster. Shouting, "I'm sorry, I'll get back to training immediately," Bo cried out worriedly. "Nick, it's dangerous, don't go back alone." The girl named Dunk stood nearby, her eyes narrowed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Hey Professor, even if you can fool those idiots, nothing gets past my eyes." She flashed a challenging smile. "I'll figure out what you were plotting soon enough, so just you wait." Hearing Donks, Cris thought to himself that this kid was truly his biggest threat. How terrifying. I wish I could switch classes. Michael and Angelina ran over, their eyes welling up with tears when they saw Cris was safe. Cris was a bit stunned, not understanding why the two of them were so emotional. "Are they crying because of me?" Angelina wiped her tears and sighed. "Oh my God, what kind of protagonist are you? You haven't even fully awakened yet." She continued to scold him. "Honestly, was it really necessary to go that far? Even after you were swallowed whole? We kept fighting without giving up. I thought this was a test. But if you were strong enough to beat it in one hit, you should have just done that from the beginning. That whole performance was way too dangerous." Cris scratched his head, wondering what to do. They've got it all wrong. But to be honest, I don't really feel like explaining, because when the monster swallowed me, and shrank mana user, its stomach just exploded from overconsumption. He then turned to both of them and said, "I've told you before, if you re not happy with my methods, you re free to leave, but whatever. For now I just need to calm them down, and get them back to training." Angelina stood silently, while Michael burst into tears, bowing his head as he cried, "I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Please don't abandon me." Professor Cris looked at his young student, thinking to himself that he was starting to feel guilty. He sighed, and then said loudly, "The rest of you, get back to training now." At the same time, he thought, "I actually do want to explain everything clearly, but in this world, every living creature possesses mana. Among them, monsters are born with very little mana, so they must absorb it from other creatures to survive. Humans, in particular, possess an overwhelming amount of mana, and frequently become their prey. Human mana is also known as a living magic crystal, and as for me, I simply possess an insane amount of it. To them I'm nothing less than a gourmet meal, like premium foie gras and caviar. But just imagine trying to stuff a watermelon into a small plastic bag. Mana that exceeds their capacity will cause their bodies to explode. Of course, I didn't expect it to go so smoothly myself. Now that the boss is dead, the minions are sure to rush in." Nick Toot unleashed her water magic, attacking the rabbit monster. At the same time, Angelina used her life magic and instantly froze all of them solid. Cris watched in amazement, thinking to himself that these kids were coordinating perfectly without ever being taught a thing. It seemed he didn't need to worry anymore. At the very least, I should protect myself. Cris took out a special piece of equipment, the monkey keychain. When equipped, increases speed by 1 rank, from F rank snail to a rank, the snail's big brother. Cris prepared to charge into battle against the monster rabbit, thinking he probably wouldn't need to give his students any more orders. He figured he'd better just speed up, but the monster rabbit's speed was overwhelming. Cris was nearly struck, but managed to dodge just in time. Still, he suffered a minor injury. His heart pounded in his chest. If he were still F rank, half of his face would have been torn off. He wasn't exactly a strength-based type. Meanwhile, the other students were easily defeating the monster rabbits. So far, they had taken down 49 out of the 50 creatures. Donixa smiled. My bad. I thought I got them all, but it looks like I missed one. Someone was watching everything from a distance. Seated on the back of a giant dragon, he smirked, thinking it was unbelievable. He thought it was just a possibility, but it was actually Cris. Cris looked in his direction, wondering who this guy was. With an appearance like that, he was practically screaming, I'm the final boss. Wait a minute. Could he be the one who teleported us here? The man on the dragon landed and walked straight up to Cris with a cryptic smile. How long has it been? Where did you disappear to, and what have you been doing all this time, Master? It's been too long since I've seen that beautiful face. Do you have any idea how much I've longed to see you? Cris was a little bewildered. He was confused because he remembered wearing a hood to hide his identity, and he had no idea what kind of relationship he had with this man. Why were his eyes like those of a young girl in love? Cris wondered who on earth this man standing in front of him was. Chris's students were also shocked, wondering who this person was, and what his relationship with their teacher could be. Cris thought that everyone was getting the wrong idea. I really don't know who he is, but the man said, what's wrong? Are you not happy to see me again? If you're still mad about what happened all those years ago, then I'm sorry. Cris grew even more confused. What are you talking about? Where have we even met before? This is bad. I'll just have to keep pretending. Michael called out to Cris from behind, but Cris didn't respond. Seeing the serious look on Chris's face, Michael began to feel uneasy. Michael thought this was the first time he'd ever seen his teacher be so guarded around someone. This man was truly dangerous. He even controlled monsters, as if they were his own flesh and blood. Could he be the one who unleashed the crazed horned rabbit? The man said, I thought someone had killed my precious children, but I never imagined it would be Cris. Michael thought to himself that if it weren't for their teacher, he would have died without a chance to even scream. The man continued. The master wanted to see how the young master was progressing. I was planning to kill one of his friends right before his eyes, but I never expected you to appear. Try to put yourself in my shoes. His words struck fear into Chris's students, but Cris calmed them down and told them to remain composed. The man continued. Since you've ruined my mission, why have you been so silent all this time? But then again, making excuses probably isn't your style. Michael thought that even though his teacher's face was brimming with killing intent, he was still restraining himself from making a move. Could it be because we here? Just from the man's aura alone, it was clear how enraged he was. Even for our teacher, it would be incredibly difficult to confront him while also protecting us. It's so frustrating. I'm still just a burden to him. With my current strength, I can only finish off monsters that are already on the brink of death. At that moment, the man said, You're also just following the master's orders, so I won't stand in your way. But if you were to smile and tell me I did a good job, it would certainly lift my spirits, Michael thought. It seems this man is also very interested in our teacher. No, look at our teacher's eyes. This is just a twisted kind of confession. The man said, If this is too awkward for you, let me help you arrange things. After all, you always used to say how handsome my face was. But right at that moment, Cris summoned a sword and aimed it directly at the man's neck. This act caught the man completely off guard. Michael became anxious, seeing that Cris had finally taken action. He struggled to understand what was going on. Where did that sword come from? He thought that on the entire continent, only a few people were capable of using creation magic. But if it's Professor Cris, perhaps it's not impossible. Cris turned to the stranger and said, What nonsense have you been spouting all this time? Are you talking in your sleep? You piece of trash. The stranger seemed a little nervous but still replied, Are you still holding a grudge about that? Cris smiled, but inside he was full of tension, thinking to himself that he was saved, because the main character had defeated the 50th monster. I had prayed earnestly. I was hoping at least one of those who had fallen would be eliminated a little sooner. Michael felt disappointed because his strength couldn't compare to Cris and the stranger, although he was sad. Michael had done the right thing by killing a monster. It was thanks to that act that the mission Cris received from the system to kill 50 monsters was completed. Because of that, Cris received a reward from the system. The system announced the reward. You have received 3/4 of the Vanda Academy map and an ancient sword. Unequip the monkey-shaped keychain and equip the rusty sword. As soon as he received the ancient sword, Cris immediately requested the system to equip it. The rusty sword was swapped in instantly. That's why Cris was holding the rusty sword, pressing it against the stranger's throat. The system announced the rusty sword can cut through almost anything. Durability 3 out of 3. Cris said, Thanks, Michael. And he thought to himself that thanks to him, he could protect both his life and his honor. Good job, Michael. Just then, The stranger turned to Cris and said, "It seems you were not in the mood to talk today. In that case, I'll come back another time. If you need help, just contact me through my master." But Cris replied in a cold voice, "Get lost now if you don't want your mouth ripped open." But inwardly, he thought, it's a relief he's retreating quietly. The stranger turned and left, leaving Cris standing there in silence. May looked around. All the students were terrified. Their eyes filled with horror. Dunixes spoke up, "Oh my god, I can barely breathe. I'm completely out of mana." Michael asked if she was okay, but Cris didn't answer him. Instead, he turned to Angelina and ordered her to send a message to the academy. Angelina replied, "Understood, in that case. I wish we had called for reinforcements sooner," but Dunxa chimed in. "If you had used a spatial teleportation spell, this would have been over long ago." Cris didn't respond to Dunx's comment. Instead, Michael said, "Miss Dunx must be really tired. Maybe she just wants to rest and think for a bit." Hearing Michael say that, Chris's eyes welled up. He thought to himself, "Having you here today was truly the luckiest thing." All the students of Class X returned safely. The next day, Cris went about his usual duties, but he thought, if the beginning is this difficult, what kind of life did this guy even live? On the way back, I kept thinking that the bandage guy is very likely the character named Maria. But there are few in this world who can create chimeras or control monsters like that. The original story didn't describe his appearance either, being followed by such a suspicious person. I can only feel that trouble is brewing. What Cris thought became a reality. A man who made him uneasy appeared before him. The person who flustered Cris in a strange way was named Ejin, the homeroom teacher of Class Y. He greeted Cris, "Haven't you eaten yet? I didn't see you in the cafeteria." Cris looked at him and thought, so it's him now. What happened during the field training that day was too unusual. So much so that the Class X students were immediately summoned by the principal. However, for some unknown reason, the principal's decision was to strengthen the defensive magic circle and issue a gag order regarding the incident. Furthermore, he even sent someone to watch me, and it's this squinty-eyed teacher. Perhaps the principal realized that the person who approached me is connected to the Demon King's army, and suspecting I might be colluding with them, he sent this man to watch me. Over a decade ago, the Demon King was defeated by the Holy Emperor and was thought to have vanished from this world, but, as is the trope in every fantasy story, he is still secretly hiding in the shadows. He is plotting his resurrection. The main character will hold back his power and eventually get his revenge on them. That's the premise of this story about the strongest hero versus the Demon King. I'm in an extremely difficult situation, stuck between the principal, who is loyal to the Holy Emperor, and the Demon King's army. If this guy takes an interest in me, I'm totally screwed. Ejin asked, "Hey Cris, have you eaten? Want to go together?" But Cris coldly replied, "You respouting non-stop nonsense. You're a real eyesore. Get out of my sight." Ejin gave a forced laugh. "Oh, is that so? Was my voice a little too loud? How about this volume then?" Ejin continued. "I'm often told I have a pleasant voice." Faced with Ejin's bizarre behavior, Cris was boiling with rage internally. But he held it back and thought to himself, is he some kind of pervert? Why am I always surrounded by people like this? Then he gritted his teeth and replied in an ice-cold voice, "I said shut your mouth." But Ejin just burst out laughing and said, "That's a bit difficult, but if you want to shut me up, feel free to use your hands." Cris felt like punching his own face, thinking, just get lost already. At that moment, the system announced a new mission from the Earth God. One of 4, building relationships with fellow teachers is also important. Try inviting a teacher to co-host a joint class. Reward 1 map of Vanda Academy, 2 rotten mandragora roots. Note, failure will result in your death. Time remaining 48 hours, Cris thought. They were not even trying to hide their malicious intent anymore. Is do it or die the default setting now? At this point, I have no choice but to use this guy. He's the homeroom teacher for Class Y. The class with the most students who transferred from Class X. But how do I bring it up without revealing my true personality? I'm not the flirtatious type. Wait a minute, the mission only says to hold a joint class. It doesn't say we have to become friends, so there's no need to pretend to be nice. Cris looked at Ejin with a serious expression. Hey, because of you, I've wasted a full 5 minutes of my life. I'd love to make you pay for that right now, but for my master's sake, I'd lose too much if I did, and that child would be sad. Cris felt his face burn with embarrassment as he spoke. Even though I came up with this backstory myself, my god, saying it out loud is so cringy. Cris continued, if you want to get close to me that badly, then let's have a match. The trash you teach versus the scum I'm raising. Let's see who's better. Meanwhile, he thought to himself, of course he won't refuse. The principal ordered him to approach me and dig up information. Ejin asked in surprise, you mean a match between the students of our 2 classes? Cris replied, if I win, don't ever show your face in front of me again. Ejin thought for a moment then said, alright, that sounds like a pretty interesting game. If I win, you'll treat me to a meal. Cris frowned. Why is he so obsessed with food? It's a mystery, Cris replied. You won't get the chance, Ijin smiled. Well then, this will be fun. When do we start? Cris answered coldly, tomorrow. Ijin said, got it, see you tomorrow. Cris turned and walked away, thinking as he went, the outcome doesn't matter. As long as we hold the joint class, that's enough, and honestly, with the bookworms of Class X, I don't think they can possibly lose. At that moment, someone was secretly eavesdropping on the entire conversation. And that person was Nick Toot. He had heard everything and asked, Professor, you are letting us compete against another class because you believe in us, right? As soon as the two professors left, Nick Toot immediately sprinted back to his classroom, his heart filled with anticipation and excitement. He wanted to share this hot news with everyone right away. On his way back, groups of students were buzzing with discussion. The atmosphere noisy as a disturbed beehive. Suddenly, someone spoke up, their voice full of excitement. Have you heard? Class and Class Y are about to face off. Let's go watch, another person chimed in. Their voice filled with unconcealed curiosity. Class X. Isn't that the class where almost everyone wanted to drop out on the very first day? Just making eye contact with their teacher is enough to make you tremble in fear. Nick Toot ran for his life, sweat beading on his forehead, muttering to himself as his heart pounded. But the most noteworthy thing about this battle is the date between Professor Ijin and Professor Cris. Arriving at the classroom door, Nick Toot took a deep breath, yanked the door open with his hand, and shouted in an excited voice, everyone, is the whole gang here? The girl Dance sighed softly, her eyes sparkling with a mix of fatigue and curiosity. She spoke up, her voice tinged with sarcasm. You called this an emergency, so I came. But what's going on here? Angelina stood beside her with her arms crossed, her eyebrows furrowed, sounding a bit impatient. I have dinner plans, so make it quick. Nick Toot entered the room, his eyes shining brightly, and said confidently, I'm sure you've all heard the news that we'll be facing off against Class Y. Dance nodded slightly, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. That's right, the professor said he would explain later, but there must be more to it. Right. Nick Toot immediately held out his hand, his voice firm and assertive. What I'm about to say, I'm sure none of you have heard yet. He paused for a second, taking a breath for dramatic effect, then said loudly, if we lose, Professor Ijin will go on a date. Hearing this, the whole group looked like they'd been struck by lightning. Their eyes wide, their jaws dropping in surprise, Dong then shouted, his voice full of shock, what? Nick Toot nodded repeatedly, his expression certain. I heard it clearly, I accidentally overheard them talking. Professor Ijin said, how about we go to dinner? Angelina was still skeptical, turning to him with a doubtful voice. Wait a minute. Are you serious? Are you sure you didn't mishear? Or did you just imagine it? Nikat put his hands on his hips, shook his head firmly, and said in a steely voice, I'm Nick Toot and Nickit never lies. Donix chimed in, his voice dreamy and curious. I mean, going out to eat with someone of the opposite gender is a date, right? This is the first time we ever heard anything like this about Professor Ijin. Hearing this, I was also a bit curious. Could our MC be a girl? Michael standing nearby nodded, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. That's right, I always thought the professor was a lone wolf, going on a date with our teacher. Nick Toot excitedly continued, his voice full of excitement. But then Professor Cris got mad, he said. If they win, don't ever show your face to me again. That means Professor Cris trusts us. Right. The whole group shouted in unison. Our spirits are soaring, so we have to fight our hardest to make the professor proud. Basically, we can't lose. Got it. Nick Toot smiled brightly, his eyes sparkling. I mean, I'm curious about the date too, but there's no way we were losing to Class Y. Hearing these words, Michael's hands clenched into fists, his gaze gradually darkened, as if a fire of determination was blazing inside him. Countless thoughts raced through his mind, his voice low and determined. We can't let the professor down. Now is the time. Angelina was startled and turned to shout, her voice worried. Your hands are shaking. Relax a little. Back to Professor Cris. His mind was now filled with crazy ideas, he muttered, his voice full of confusion. This whole date thing is going too far. A few days passed in a flash, and today was the day of the decisive battle at the Academy's arena. The students of both classes had gathered. The atmosphere was as tense as a drawn bowstring. And just looking at the numbers, the difference was obvious. Professor Ijin turned to the students, held up 2 fingers, and said in a steady voice, do you all understand the competition format? This time, it's individual duels, 1-on-1, and the first team to win 3 matches will be the overall winner. Cris snorted, his voice full of dissatisfaction. How troublesome. Wouldn't a single team battle be faster? Ijin laughed heartily, his voice booming. Haha, it's still too early to teach you all team combat. In Chris's mind, countless thoughts raced by. He thought to himself, oh, I thought everyone already did that. My students can already perform combination attacks without even thinking. The main character's build is just insane, Ijin continued, his voice excited. Now choose your first warrior. Cris stroked his chin, his sharp eyes narrowing as he muttered. No need to think too hard. I've taught them what's necessary. They just need to level up and crush the opponent with pure strength. He immediately called out, Nick Toot. Hearing his name, Nick Toot's face lit up like the sun. He stepped forward, his voice full of confidence. Yes, Professor. I will return with victory in hand. It's either victory or death. Cris muttered under his breath, his voice awkward. You don't have to go that far. This is just a practice match. Nika and his opponent stepped onto the field. A number 5 appeared above each of their heads like a health bar. Ijin explained in a clear voice. Whoever reaches 0 first loses. The match ends immediately at that point. The warriors took their positions. 3, 2, 1, begin! As soon as the command was given, the girl from Class I rushed to attack Nick Toot at lightning speed. But Nick Toot didn't flinch, his calm eyes observing his opponent. As she approached, he swung his sword hard, landing a precise blow in her opening. The powerful strike took the girl by surprise, sending her flying backward and falling to the ground with a cry of pain. The number 5 above her head instantly turned to 0, signaling the end of the match. Cris, standing on the sidelines, was startled, his eyes wide at his student's power. Ijin announced loudly, Nick Toot of Class X wins the first round. After the match, Nick Toot went over to help the Class Y girl up, his voice gentle. Are you okay? Let me help you up. The girl shyly scratched her head, her voice small. How embarrassing. I'll win next time. Watching this lovey-dovey scene, Cris muttered to himself, his voice full of astonishment. What the heck is this? Why is no one else as shocked as I am? The surrounding crowd began to buzz with conversation. One person said, not bad at all. Another replied, yeah, that's Nick Toot. I wouldn't expect anything less. Cris frowned and muttered, wait a minute. Tank level damage from a support. Michael watched from the sidelines, his eyes sparkling with pride, shouting, nice one, Nick Toot, how can you kick that hard? Meanwhile, Cris was still lost in thought, muttering, thank goodness, I'm not the only one freaking out here. Ijin smiled, his voice full of excitement. Alright. Who's up next? Cris gently stroked his chin, pretending to think, but he had already chosen a candidate. He called out, Angelina, as soon as her name was spoken. Both Angelina and everyone around her flinched slightly. The girl tossed her hair and stepped forward with overwhelming confidence, her voice firm. I will easily secure another victory. In Chris's mind, he thought to himself, so we'll end this match with Dunix last. No need to send in the weak ones or the healer. Cris glanced over and saw Michael looking at him with the expectant eyes of a lost puppy, making him mutter, why is he looking at me like that? Mai, standing beside him, thought to herself, just give him a chance. Teacher Dauncey smiled, a mischievous look in his eyes as he glanced at Cris. The referee announced, the second match begins. Angelina immediately launched a powerful attack her opponent, but this opponent was no pushover. He parried her blow cleanly with his sword. The crowd below buzzed with excitement. Just as expected from the Hair of the Syrup family, a classic ice magic prodigy, watching his student's performance, Cris nodded and mumbled, whoa. Those piercing clashes against the ice shards look so cool. In the arena, Angelina relentlessly attacked, overwhelming her opponent in just a few moves. A final decisive blow took him down, and the referee shouted, that's enough, Angelina of Class X is the winner. The girl struck a confident pose and nodded slightly, of course. Cris looked at her, frowning, and thought to himself, why does she look just like my dog when it gets smug? I want to praise her, but I have to maintain my role, he said aloud. What are you waiting for? Get back here now. Angelina was startled, and replied shyly, I'm on my way back. Seeing his team down 2-0, Ijin turned and said calmly, one more win and it's over. Cris didn't answer right away, closing his eyes to think, let's end this cleanly. He called out, Dunxie, hearing her name. Dunix stepped forward confidently, resting her chin on Michael's shoulder, her voice full of pride. Professor, I will hold them off for you. At her sudden declaration, Nick Toot clenched his fists and spoke up. What? Are you suddenly feeling unwell? Or are you trying to let the professor go on a date? Hearing these words, Chris's expression tightened slightly. He thought to himself, what's this about a date? Then he let out a small sigh. Whatever. I'll just ask for her reason first. Finishing his thought, he spoke, are you scared? Donix quickly explained, no. It's just that I think it's unfair, because letting me fight in a one-on-one match is basically breaking the rules, right? Hearing this, Cris nodded, yeah. You're right about that. He continued to think, this kid has a twin sister, the sixth member of the main character's party, who always supports her. But no one knows that for certain reasons. What is she planning? Then Donix walked over to Michael, squeezed his hand, smiled, and said, so, please win for me. Michael looked at her actions, and Cris sighed internally. As I thought, she's stirring up trouble again. He rubbed his head in frustration, thinking, she probably thinks this is a chance for the main character to shine. Oh well, It's fine if we lose one round. Noticing Chris's tired expression, Michael started to ask the professor a question, but Cris immediately cut him off, crossing his arms and narrowing his eyes, asking in a decisive tone, "Are you prepared?" At this question, Michael clenched his fists with determination and shouted, "Yes, sir. I'll give it my all to win." Seeing this confident attitude, Cris smiled and thought to himself, "This is just a match between students. Everything will be fine, right?" After that, Michael stepped into the arena, his opponent a guy with purple hair. Seeing Michael, the purple-haired guy spoke up, "Hey Michael, you disgusting, cursed commoner, I'm personally fighting you. You should be grateful." Looking at the purple-haired kid, Chris's expression suddenly darkened. He thought, crap, I forgot about those side characters who exist just to bully the main character. Back in the match, the purple-haired guy continued his provocation. "Hey, I'm done. Aren't you going to say anything?" Michael remained calm and didn't respond. Down below, Cris clenched his fists, muttering, "I know the plot needs someone to provoke the main character, but this timing is just terrible." Suddenly, a voice echoed in Michael's head. "How does it feel to kill your own mother, and then come to this academy? You piece of trash." Hearing these words, Michael's face darkened, and his breathing became labored. He started to speak, Don't say any more." Seeing Michael's slightly fearful attitude, the purple-haired guy stroked his chin and smiled, "Haha. How creepy. That curse is even moving. It's truly terrifying." Michael covered his face with his hands and shouted, "Stop saying things like that." Down below, Cris grew more tense. He thought to himself, after that half-baked awakening, it wasn't just his abilities that grew. This isn't an awakening. Another teacher suddenly exclaimed, "What's wrong? Is he okay?" The voice in Michael's head continued to echo. This was a sign of him losing control. Michael shouted, "Run, go, hurry, no." Looking at Michael's state, the purple-haired guy clenched his fist, wondering, What are you talking about? That's enough. Don't just stand there. I will take you down in a single blow." Down below, Chris's eyes widened as he thought, damn it, this is no time to be thinking about character roles anymore. He immediately shouted, "Cancel the match." But everything was already out of control. Michael's entire body was now covered in a dense aura of black sword energy, erupting across the entire arena, causing all the teachers to feel terrified. One of them exclaimed, "What is happening?" Looking at this scene, Cris broke out in a cold sweat thinking, we really done for this time. He has completely turned into a monster. At this point, Michael had almost fully transformed into a monster with 2 horns growing on his head. Faced with this transformation, the purple-haired guy was startled and screamed, "It's a monster! Save me! Don't come near me!" But Michael had lost what was left of his humanity, clenching his fists, and charged straight at the purple-haired guy to attack. Down below, Cris was stunned when suddenly, the system sent a notification that the difficulty of incidents could change depending on the situation. As a teacher, please conclude this class safely. Receiving the notification, Cris gritted his teeth and thought, do I always have to handle impossible situations like this? Do I have to personally stop the main character who's losing control? After thinking it over, he gritted his teeth and dashed forward, muttering to himself, the only thing that reassures me is that this place was created so no one has to die. At this sudden action, Nika Tit called out from behind, "Professor." Looking at Michael's face, there seemed to be a sliver of human reason left. This filled Cris with hope. He continued to think, while I still can. Suddenly, a blue-haired figure flashed past him, rushing towards Michael and shouting, "Cover your eyes." As soon as the words were out, golden chains shot out, wrapping around Michael to restrain him. Ian's sudden appearance caused the demon within Michael to instinctively swing its arm, landing a powerful blow that sent Ian flying a few meters. Everything happened so fast. People only had time to scream Ian. The teachers hurriedly shouted, "Retreat, all teachers prepare a sealing magic." But one of them exclaimed, "It's no use, that abnormal mana source is blocking our spells." Seeing Cris still lost in thought, a teacher shouted, "Professor Cris, what are you doing? Please run away quickly." But Cris paid no mind to those words, continuing to walk towards Michael. As he got closer, the remaining sliver of humanity in Michael spoke, "Professor Cris." Looking at Michael before him, Cris thought to himself, if it were the real Cris, she definitely wouldn't run away. It's only now that we can officially confirm our main character is female. Everyone, Michael struggled to speak. "Professor Cris, you were not running, run away now." Cris looked up, thinking, I almost broke character because I was so scared, but I can't give up here. She clenched her fists, muttering, "It seems he recognizes me. Now's my chance." She immediately moved forward, kicking Michael hard in the leg, and grabbed his body with her other hand, pulling him close. Michael was completely surprised, feeling the mana surging from Michael's body. Cris angrily shouted, "Is this the kind of power you want? What destiny you carry is important. But if you are truly determined, you can be reborn as a stronger person. That's why I said you could become stronger." Cris immediately took off her cloak and draped it over Michael, who was now completely bare. Then she turned her back to leave, saying, "There won't be a next time. Let's go home, Michael." At this moment, after she took off her cloak, we got to see Chris's impressive mountains. Watching Chris's retreating back, Michael's face turned shy, his eyes filled with regret for his recent impulsive actions. He stood silently, his heart heavy, cut into Cris. She looked down at her right arm, which was now blistered and red. A moment ago, when she touched Michael, an intense pain had flared up, making her unable to stop from crying out, "Hurts so much I'm about to die." She clenched her fists, bracing herself against the pain as sweat beaded on her forehead. Suddenly, the system's cold notification rang out. "Mission complete. You have received the 4 out of 4 Vanda Academy map and a rotten mandragora root as a reward. The map has been updated, and the location tracking function is now unlocked." Before she could even process it, the system continued. "The rotten mandragora root is a consumable item. Effect recovery speed increased by 200%, side effects unknown." And then another notification appeared. "Wish of the Earth God. All Chapter 1 missions have been completed." Faced with the barrage of notifications, Cris gritted her teeth and muttered, "That's a lot." She looked down at her blistered hands, her voice full of dissatisfaction. "These are burns, right? I left those students and that squinty-eyed guy behind." But she looked up, her gaze fixed on the system map that appeared before her, muttering finally, "Some progress." Her eyes grew distant. Recalling the moment she faced Michael, a flicker of worry crossed her mind. "I'm worried about Michael." But the scene changes to the Vanda Academy hospital. Cris stood anxiously in front of a room, her eyes filled with hesitation. She shrank back, thinking to herself, "This is a bit out of character for me. But why does it feel like I'm obsessed with losing a disciple?" From inside, a voice called out, pulling her from her thoughts. "I knew you'd come." Cris was startled. Her heart-pounding Ijin, covered in bandages and wounds, lay on the hospital bed with a radiant smile. "You're a good person after all. Come on in." Realizing she'd been caught, Cris frowned slightly, thinking, "He's really sharp." She walked to the bedside, her voice reproachful. "You did a foolish thing." Ijin just smiled, scratching his ear shyly, his handsome face making it hard for anyone to resist. "Oh, so you finally noticed." Cris suddenly recalled the moment Ijin rushed at her, muttering, "Come to think of it, he didn't use any defensive magic when he jumped in, did he? Did he just take it head-on? He's a real idiot." It was as if Ijin could read her mind. Laughing heartily, "I was confident I wouldn't die, and if it means I owe you a favor, then it was worth it." Faced with this blatant flirting, Cris frowned, cursing inwardly, "You bastard." But Ijin continued, his voice full of excitement, "Hey, what about our bet? In terms of wins, I'm still ahead." Cris immediately cut him off, her voice firm, "Of course you lost." Ijin stroked his chin, pondered for a moment, then replied cheerfully, "All right. How about this? To celebrate your victory, I'll treat you to a meal." Cris frowned, annoyed. "Did you forget the terms?" Ijin gave a sheepish smile, feigning innocence. "Oh, I must have hit my head. I seem to have forgotten." At this shameless attitude, Cris turned to leave. "This is a completely personal invitation, so feel free to contact me anytime," Ijin said excitedly, his face beaming. "I can't take this anymore." After leaving the hospital room, Cris leaned against the door, panting and thinking to herself, what the hell just happened? Is this a dating sim now? Why have things turned out this way? The system's voice rang out again, from Chapter 2 onwards. The story will branch depending on the player's choices. Touch an option to see the details. Route 1, Demon King. Route 2, Holy Emperor. Route 3, unselectable. Looking at the 3 options before her, Cris was startled, muttering, "What's with these choices? And what are these hearts for?" She touched the Demon King route, murmuring, "First, let's see the explanation for the Demon King route." The system announced, "Demon King route. You infiltrate Vanda Academy as a spy for the Demon King. Objective: recruit Michael to the Demon King's side and conquer the world. Those on the Demon King's side will be friendly towards you, while the Holy Emperor's side will be hostile." Cris pondered to herself, "So that means the main character will be dragged into the Demon King's army." She tapped on the Holy Emperor route to see the details. The system continued, "Holy Emperor route. You betray the Demon King and decide to train talented individuals at Vanda Academy. Objective: make Michael loyal to the Holy Emperor and prevent the Demon King's resurrection. The Demon King's side will be hostile, while the Holy Emperor's side will be friendly." She thought to herself, "So I'll be training Michael to become a holy knight." She checked the last option, unselectable. The system announced, "Unselectable route. Hesitation gets you hated. You know, not suitable for a useless person like you. Both the Demon King's side and the Holy Emperor's side will be wary of you." Cris gritted her teeth and cursed inwardly. Just as I expected, what a bastard. Her thoughts were a mess. Choosing a side would make it easier to survive. But if I choose the Holy Emperor, I'll have to deal with people like Maria. I really don't want that at all. And if I choose the Demon King, That perverted bastard will become my enemy. So I'm not choosing any side. She gritted her teeth and muttered, "It seems this is the only way." After a moment of hesitation, she reached out and made her choice. The system announced, "Good luck." Cris lowered her head, thinking to herself that there was no turning back now. But then, her expression suddenly changed. She clenched her fist, her voice filled with determination. "I don't regret this choice one bit." She paused, watching the butterflies outside the window, muttering, "The tiny flutter of a butterfly's wings can cause a hurricane. So it's not strange no matter what the outcome is." Suddenly, she clutched her head and screamed, "Wait a minute, I'm the actual main character, right? So why am I getting kicked out of my job like this?" She recalled the day after she chose her route. A pink-haired girl approached her and said, "Oh, Miss Cris, starting tomorrow, you re going on leave, right?" The girl continued, "The principal said Miss Cris will be on leave for a month, so I will be in charge of Class X, the principal himself told me." Hearing this, Cris cursed under her breath. What the hell? What did she just say? Back in the present, Cris stroked her chin thoughtfully. "The reason I, someone who always does what she wants, was put on leave." She recalled the system notification that people on the Holy Emperor's side would be wary of her. Her gaze grew pensive as she muttered, "Could it be because of the route I chose, the unchosen one?" An information panel appeared, showing Cris Doton ranked 10th. Rumored to be a rebel, she clenched her fist, thinking to herself, "Well, it did say they'd be wary of me." Dejectedly, she sprawled out on her comfy bed and sighed. Even so, the other options were just too risky. Besides, Cris has an unpredictable personality. "I just didn't think I'd actually get kicked out for real." She continued to mutter. The Demon King's faction was a no-go, and the Holy Emperor's route with that annoying loyalty oath was just as bad. Those fanatics wouldn't lie without proof. She sat up, rubbing her neck with a sigh. Because of this whole setup, I can't even pathetically beg my way out of it. Oh well, I guess it's a rare vacation anyway. Suddenly, the system sent a notification: Earth God's Wish 2.1. Parent-Teacher Day is about to begin. Chris's eyes widened in confusion. This is the first I've ever heard of this. The system continued. The students' parents are very curious about how their children's tuition is being spent. Since you are a teacher who lives off their money, you are responsible for making Class X Parent-Teacher Day a success. Reward: a gift box. Failure: your corpse will rot in a garbage pit. Time remaining 72 hours. Cris jumped, clutching her head and shouting in anger, "Are you kidding me? Parent-Teacher Day? I'm not in elementary school." She clenched her fists, cursing, "I don't have time to lead a class for a bunch of outsiders to observe. More importantly, I'm unemployed right now, on forced leave." Her resolve hardened, her eyes burning with determination. This is no time for a break. I have to get back to work within the next 72 hours to survive. The scene shifts to the academy, where the atmosphere has suddenly grown tense. Nick turns around, startled, his voice laced with surprise and confusion. The teacher is on leave." Bio, sitting beside him, gave a slight nod and replied calmly, "That's why the school has appointed a substitute teacher. I don't know the reason either." Dunxie, still resting her chin in her hand and staring blankly into the distance, spoke nonchalantly, her voice tinged with wariness. "She probably left because she was tired of it all. Besides, she's not the type to be tied down by the teaching profession." Her expression grew thoughtful, as if lost in her thoughts. "She probably got sick of us, right?" Angelina, sitting to the side, immediately interrupted, her voice sharp. "Cut it out. Talking badly about her behind her back is just cowardly." Dunk smirked, shooting her a mocking look. "That's not very convincing coming from someone with a face like yours." Princess Angelina's face instantly turned bright red, her eyes welling with tears. She stammered, "What's that supposed to mean? What's wrong with my face?" Bio sighed quietly, trying to calm things down. Maybe she just needed a rest, or something unavoidable happened. Suddenly, Nick slammed his hand on the desk and shot to his feet, yelling, "That's it." He clenched his fists, his voice filled with conviction. "She's taking the fall for me for what happened recently." As he said this, he flopped back into his seat, his back slamming against the metal chair. Making a loud clanging sound, he gently rubbed his shoulder, his small frame trembling from the pain. Meanwhile, the two girls, Bio and Dunx, looked over at Meiko, who was sitting there deep in thought. Meiko thought silently to himself, his heart heavy. "I know that my rampage made the teacher have to run around to many places. I thought everything was resolved with the principal's official stamp." He clenched his fist, blaming himself. "Did she take the blame for me? I never even got the chance to thank her." Suddenly, he shot up, his voice filled with determination. "I have to do something. I'm definitely going to bring her back." Nick Toot's footsteps quickened. He rushed straight to the pink-haired teacher's office, shouting frantically, "Teacher, there's an emergency. Please connect me to the principal." Hearing him call her temporary teacher, the pink-haired woman frowned slightly, her expression showing her annoyance. She said in a stern voice, Nick Toot, how many times have I told you? My name is. But Nick Toot cut her off immediately, his voice urgent. This isn't the time to talk about that. He clenched his fists and shouted. Michael might be about to lose control. At Nick Toot's words, the woman wasn't surprised at all. She gently rubbed her forehead, thinking warily to herself. I wonder how many times this has happened. The students are all children of famous people, so I have to humor them. But none of them listen to me. Besides, how much longer is this farce going to last? Snapping out of her thoughts, she spoke in a tired voice, losing control again this time. All right, let's go take a look. The two of them hurriedly ran to find Michael. At that moment, Michael was trembling violently, his hands covering his face, sweat pouring down. He muttered in a broken voice. There's something inside me. It's about to explode. Seeing that Michael's acting wasn't convincing enough, Dongse, who was behind him, chimed in to coach him, her voice tinged with mockery. That's not enough. You have to put more passion into it. Come on. Take off your shirt. Go on and take it all off. This girl seemed quite opportunistic, even letting out a giggle. Bo added from the side. It's okay. If anyone gets hurt, I'll heal them all. Looking at the students' awkward attitudes, the pink-haired woman crossed her arms and thought to herself, these kids are all equally bad at acting. Then she spoke warily. Michael, if a student shows signs of losing control, the teachers receive an immediate warning because we relicensed for it. But right now, there haven't been any alerts, so there's no problem, is there? Right? Seeing his plan was exposed, Michael sighed softly and said sheepishly, yes. I'm sorry. Seeing Michael's defeated attitude, Nick Toot, who was behind him, clenched his fists and shouted, Michael, are you really going to give up? The only one who acknowledges you is Professor Cris. You probably think the professor will come back to stop you, right? Hearing the name Cris, the pink-haired woman gritted her teeth, cursing inwardly. It's always the same, always Cris. What's so great about that muscle-brained girl anyway? Then she sighed, putting on a wary expression, thinking about the upcoming class observation day. The parents of these kids are all big shots. If I get on the students' good side, I'll be set for life. But the temporary teacher couldn't just sit still after this charade. Students really would act like that. Scene changed to the Frog in a Well Inn. Inside the inn, the atmosphere was heavy, as if it was pressing down on the entire space. Cris was calmly sipping her glass of wine in small mouthfuls, her cold gaze never leaving the bottle. The innkeeper stood behind the counter, looking at her with a less than welcoming attitude. He grumbled, his voice full of dissatisfaction. I'm over 50 years old this year, and in all my time running this inn, I've never seen a customer like this. At first, I just thought she was a suspicious-looking traveler, but it's been over 3 hours now, with that scowling face, sipping wine in tiny mouthfuls. She's taken over the entire first floor. The atmosphere is way too tense. Customers don't dare to come near. At this rate, I'll go bankrupt. His gaze fell thoughtfully on Cris as he muttered. And what's with that aura of hers? Could she be a demon king in disguise? Is my inn really going to go bankrupt today? He immediately dismissed the thought, reassuring himself. No, that can't be it. I must be imagining things. Suddenly, someone walked in from outside. The innkeeper's attitude changed instantly, becoming welcoming. Welcome. But a moment later, his expression changed drastically. His eyes widening in shock, the man before him, with his magnificent blue hair, exuded an air of nobility that left him stunned. Who is so dazzling? This man was Duke Syrup, Angelina's father. From behind, another person appeared, with shimmering blonde hair, and placed a hand on Syrup's shoulder, saying, see, I told you not to take off your hood. Looking at your face, people are practically stunned into silence. This person was Natasha Toot, Nick Toot's mother. Seeing the familiar way the two interacted, the innkeeper jumped in surprise. Duke Syrup is being teased. Syrup turned and smiled lightly at Natasha. I wasn't trying to charm anyone. Natasha immediately retorted. I didn't say anything about charming, did I? You know exactly how handsome you are. Suddenly, another person approached, with fiery red hair and a stern voice. That's enough. You two need to book a room first. It's been a while since I've been on my feet, and my legs are killing me. This man was Henry Bright, Dunks' father. He approached the counter, looking at the innkeeper with a calm demeanor. We'd like to rent 3 rooms. These 3 high-grade mana stones should be enough, right? I've been secluded in the magic tower for 80 years, so I'm not familiar with the current prices. Staring at the massive mana stone in front of him, the innkeeper's eyes widened as he thought to himself, what? A single high-grade mana stone could buy this entire inn. And what did he just say? 80 years, he mumbled. What in the world is going on today? Natasha stepped forward and asked, Hey Bright, something's felt off for a while now. Her words drew the attention of both Bright and the innkeeper. She took a few more steps, then suddenly drew her sword and pointed it straight at Cress's neck, who was still sipping her drink in the corner of the tavern. This action made the innkeeper tremble in fear. It's really over now. I'm definitely going bankrupt this time. Natasha stared directly at Cris, her voice cold. Your killing intent has been overflowing this whole time. What are you planning to do to us? Cris, still calmly holding her glass, slowly turned around and gripped the bottle beside her, her eyes as cold as ice, her voice threatening. Get lost. If you don't want your head smashed in. Natasha smiled, completely unfazed. I wouldn't be so sure about that. The head that rolls today might just be yours. Her words made the atmosphere in the tavern as tense as a drawn bowstring. The innkeeper could only lament silently. Oh my god. I should probably just quit the innkeeping business altogether. The atmosphere in the inn remained as tense as a drawn bowstring. Cris tightened her grip on the bottle, trying to look cool, her cold gaze fixed on the golden liquor. But inside her, a storm was raging. Oh my god. What the hell is happening here? Why did things turn out like this? She shuddered slightly as she recalled. Just a few minutes ago, I was just running from a cockroach and came down here to have a drink to cheer myself up. Rewinding a few minutes. Cris was dejectedly staring at the countdown timer on the system window before her. Her eyes grew vacant as a cold smile flashed across her face. That's twice now. I keep ignoring my character's persona. Maybe I should just go straight to the principal and beg, she thought, filled with dissatisfaction. Suddenly, the innkeeper's voice rang out, interrupting her train of thought. Welcome, valued guests. Following the direction of the voice, Cris glanced toward the main entrance. Duke Seraph walked in, his magnificent blue hair exuding a noble aura. She mumbled, holy crap, no way. Then two more people appeared. Cris was even more stunned, whispering, Seraph Toot and Bright too. The Duke, the captain of the Royal Knights, and the master of the Magic Tower. What are they all doing together in an inn like this? She suddenly realized the situation before her was exactly like a parent-teacher conference. Chris's face went pale with fear, and she quickly turned her head away, cursing under her breath. Crap, I'm so dead. This is too sudden. I'm not mentally prepared at all. But she reassured herself. These busy nobles probably don't even know what I look like. If I just quietly ignore them, everything will be fine. I'm just a cockroach hiding in the corner of the room. But Chris's killing intent unintentionally began to radiate from her, filling the entire space and attracting Natasha's attention. And then, the inevitable happened. Natasha approached, her sword pointed straight at Chris's neck, and shouted in a cold voice, hey, your killing intent has been pouring out this whole time. In this situation, Cris could only weep internally. Things really never go the way I want them to, she thought, her eyes blazing with killing intent. If I run now, their gazes will burn me to a crisp. Before her was Natasha Teote, the mother of a top student, and also the most famous knight in the kingdom. Natasha spoke with a calm demeanor. Why don't you draw your sword? It's not just for decoration, is it? Her words startled Cris for a moment, who thought to herself, when did she see my sword? This old sword can only be used 3 times, who would want to waste a use in a situation like this? A thought flashed through her mind. That's right, Natasha is a knight, so if I don't draw my sword, she won't attack. Thinking this, Cris let out a small sigh of relief and tried to regain her composure. She decided to lean into her cool persona a bit more. In a soft yet meaningful tone, Cris spoke up, the wine at this inn is more drinkable than the sewer water from the Red Kingdom. Her statement made the other 3 look confused. Cris continued, her voice full of challenge, but if I were to draw my sword, this entire area would be flattened. She raised the bottle, took a sip, and then added, and then I wouldn't be able to drink this wine again next year. The thought was a bit of a shame. Her words touched the innkeeper, who covered his mouth and thought with emotion, is she worried about my inn? But internally Cris was screaming, no, don't believe it, old man. If you keep serving this swill, you will go bankrupt sooner or later. Natasha flashed an excited smile and said, worried about this tavern in a situation like this. You were really something else. She suddenly sheathed her sword, held out her hand and said in a gentle tone, my apologies for being rude. You probably already know, but allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Natasha Teote, a knight of the kingdom. Cris frowned, thinking to herself, she changes her tune in a heartbeat. She spoke, her tone slightly sarcastic. You sure change your attitude easily. Don't you? Natasha replied with an awkward laugh. I'm not ashamed to correct my behavior. It would be truly shameful for a knight, who is responsible for protecting the people, to be inconsiderate of their surroundings. Then she turned to the tavern owner. Sir, I'd like to buy all the remaining alcohol in your establishment as an apology. I still have a lot to talk about with this person. She glanced over at Seraph and Bright, calling out, Seraph, Bright, you two come over here too. Natasha's unexpected actions made Cris jump. Seraph and Bright approached the table. Cris, maintaining her composure, said, in that case, I'll just have a glass of water instead of alcohol. Bright sighed softly, I suppose it can't be helped. Looking at the Empire's big shots sitting before her, Cris froze and cursed inwardly. Damn it, with this atmosphere. They were probably planning to drink all night long. Natasha smiled. breaking the tense atmosphere. You can't back out now. You know, the alcohol here is even better than back home, right? Cris could only cry inwardly. Somebody save me. The group drank from morning till night, late into the night. Cris finally staggered back to her room, collapsing onto the bed, drooling and muttering, I'm really going to die. She calmed herself down, thinking, how much did I have to drink to keep from throwing up? But it was good. At least I managed to get friendly with them. Recalling the drinking session, Cris muttered that just as she was thinking of an excuse to leave, Natasha had said, "Oh, you re-heading to the academy as well? Then just pack your bags and come with us." Then she had continued, "The reason we in such a hurry is because of that Duke with severe social anxiety over there." Cris thought to herself, "Do Seraph a social anxiety disorder?" But she quickly realized the class observation was just an excuse. Their real goal was to see the protagonist, Michael, for themselves. The one who caused the incident at the academy, a student who's unaffected by conventional magic, turned his best friend into a monster, and even defeated a teacher. The rumors must have already spread widely. She sighed softly. Michael, you've begun to walk the path of a protagonist. Keep up the good work. The scene shifts to the next day. Everyone was leaving the inn. Natasha looked at Cris and said, "Hey Cris, you were pretty late." She walked over, linked her arm with Chris's, and said in a concerned tone, "You were looking a bit pale. Let me take your arm, and if you feel tired, just lean on me." The offer startled Cris for a moment. She figured her acting during the drinking session must have been too convincing, making Natasha genuinely worry. But she quickly corrected that thought. No, right now it looks more like she's being escorted under arrest. Bright looked up at the sky and said, "Oh, it's starting to rain. We'd better hurry." Rain began to fall. Natasha looked ahead, where Vanda Academy came into view, and exclaimed, "Oh my, we were so caught up in conversation that I didn't even realize we'd arrived." Cris thought to herself, "It's more like you were the only one talking." From a distance, a few figures ran towards them. Catching Chris's attention, a loud shout echoed, "The professor is being taken away." Cris looked on, thinking, I can't make them out clearly. Do they look like wild boars? A thought flashed in her mind. Could it be an enemy attack? Her body felt unsteady, and she cursed to herself, damn it, just as I was about to move closer, my legs feel wobbly. But in that moment, Natasha quickly caught Cris, saying, "Oh my, Cris, be careful. Is there anything I can do to help?" From afar, the group of people kept running towards them, shouting, "Professor." Cris turned and snapped, "Be quiet." But just as she spoke, someone swung a sword straight at Natasha. The blow was easily parried by Natasha. Cris was momentarily stunned, thinking a light sword. That's from the house of Tiet. No way, it turned out the attacker was Nick Tiet. Natasha burst out laughing. I thought we were under attack, but who knew my own little boy would dare swing his sword at his mother? You've gotten bold, haven't you? Nick Tiet recognized his mother and shouted, trembling, Mom, why are you trying to kidnap the professor? Natasha glanced at with a smirk, a professor. Cris gritted her teeth and cursed inwardly, unbelievable. To think her identity would be revealed this way. She turned and asked, "Did you really think I was being kidnapped?" Just then, the mysterious figures were revealed, and they were all Chris's students. Angelina said breathlessly, "Professor, is it really you?" Donchek clenched his fist and sighed, "See, I told you, who could possibly kidnap someone like the professor?" Recognizing all the familiar faces, Cris heaved a wary sigh. "I knew it. Did you kids really climb the wall to get in here?" "Fine, first things first, explain why you did that." She crossed her arms, looked at the last mysterious figure, and coldly demanded they explain everything, realizing he'd been caught. Michael pulled down his hood and looked directly at Cris. His gaze was filled with embarrassment. Stammering, he said, "Professor." Michael began to stutter. "Professor, he hesitated. "I thought you had abandoned us. So we decided to come find you." Hearing this, Cris thought to herself, what's with this tragic heroine dialogue? Michael continued, "We haven't even had the chance to apologize or thank you. There are so many things we still have to say to you, but if you had to go, we just wanted to see you one last time." She could feel the kid's affection for her, but Cris thought to herself, damn it, that doesn't give you the right to break the rules like this. Then she said coldly, "Get straight to the point." May put a hand to her chest and said clearly, "What I mean to say is, if you were willing, would you please come back and be our professor again?" Her words left Cris stunned, and she wondered to herself, "You don't understand a single thing. I haven't even done anything." These students were truly strange. No matter what they asked, they made me want to become a better professor. She thought for a moment, then sighed and said, "Looks like you all going to keep causing trouble for me. Let's go now." We heading back to the academy. At her words, the three students' eyes immediately lit up with excitement. After that, everything went so smoothly that Cris wondered why she had been worried at all. She recalled the scene where the three parents confronted Professor Lily, with Natasha chiding, Hey Lully, what did you do to make the professor resign mid-semester? Bright added, as far as I'm concerned, this professor is the only one who can handle my niece. Seraph shared the sentiment. It's rare to find someone on the same level as my family. Thanks to the pressure and persuasive words from the parents, Cris was now able to go back to work, but she still didn't know what she would teach. Then, an idea suddenly sparked in her mind: self-study. Upon hearing this, Natasha exclaimed enthusiastically, self-study, her teaching methods are so unique. Bright gently stroked his chin and said, it sounds like some kind of Eastern meditation, doesn't it? Having convinced the parents, Cris thought to herself, that's not an issue anymore since I've established a connection. But then her gaze shifted to Angelina, who seemed emotionally unstable at the moment. But I have another problem on my hands. And the cause was sitting right over there, yawning Duke Seraph. He looked like he had his head in the clouds. But he was the one who had turned Princess Angelina into a true princess. After holding back for so long, Angelina's voice trembled as she asked, excuse me, Professor, may I use the restroom for a moment? Without a second thought, Cris nodded. But the moment Angelina stood up, she swayed unsteadily, and the color drained from her face. Seeing this, Michael walked over to check on her. Hey Angelina, are you okay? From behind, Seraph stepped forward and remarked, how strange, my Angelina isn't normally like this. Without a moment's delay, Angelina shot to her feet and ran for the door. Worried, May scrambled after her, yelling, hey Angelina! The girl's bizarre reaction made Cris think. He didn't think she'd be this shaken. Is she planning to go out for a smoke again? I should probably follow her. Noticing she was about to leave, Natasha asked, Professor, where are you going? You are not just going to leave your guests here, are you? Cris turned and replied coldly, class is over for today. There's nothing left to see, so everyone should leave. The incredibly dull class made Natasha sigh. What, that's all? Absolutely nothing happened. Bright suggested, how about we go for a drink? Meanwhile, Seraph's gaze showed he was deep in thought. Outside, Cris stood before the door to a room. From inside, the sound of Angelina's sobbing made Cris feel uneasy. She thought, she must really hate being seen in this state, to have to hide in an empty classroom. Suddenly, a system notification appeared. Mission complete. Please choose one of the following rewards. 1. The durable shield of the Frost Warrior. 2. The mysterious item of Succubus 20. 3. The dashing cloak of the incredibly famous man. Staring at the 3 choices on the notification screen, Chris's jaw dropped, completely bewildered. The rewards are getting stranger and stranger. I will just pick the one I think my character needs. But that's not important right now. After making her choice, she pushed the door open, walked in, and called out to Angelina Seraph. The kid didn't notice her presence yet. Still sobbing uncontrollably, Cris called out loudly, and Dant Seraph. Hearing this name, Angelina jumped in shock and replied, how do you know that name? Cris thought to herself, the kid must be in shock, and Dant was the name of a boy with delayed development. So he could perfectly pass as his younger sister, Angelina. When this princess's true gender was revealed in the original story, the comment section exploded. One person cursed, is the author insane? This is total nonsense. Another said, what the hell is going on? Trying way too hard. Another person commented, a handsome guy with a secret. Now this is getting interesting. Reading these comments, Cris thought to herself, are you guys serious? The princess's real name is Bryceri, an illegitimate child with mediocre abilities, passed over in the line of succession for his promising younger sister, Angelina. But then one day, Angelina disappeared, and many vied for her position. But Duke Seraph wanted someone who could imitate her rather than another successor. And Dant was chosen because he resembled her. After a harsh training and brainwashing program, he became the perfect Angelina Seraph. But living as someone else was never easy, according to the novel. He suffered from severe obsessive-compulsive disorder and physical pain, because his growth was magically suppressed. The kid was now trembling all over, sobbing, and asked, how do you know that name? I don't know how much you know, but if my father finds out, you will disappear too. I don't want to lose you. Professor Cris then realized, oh, that's right. Everyone who knew about Indant was taken care of by Duke Seraph. Snapping out of her thoughts, she spoke confidently. Do I look like someone you can mess with? I need to solidify my position, and while I'm at it, I'll also gain an ally. The Seraph family is one of the few powerful houses that sides with neither the Holy Emperor nor the Demon King. I'm in a similar situation, so I need some insurance if I want to survive. She then called Indanta's name, but Indant reminded her, call me Angelina. She continued, lead Class X to victory in the school tournament. She thought to herself, that will make them indebted to me. And since I've already read the novel, I'll do it with knowledge that only I possess. Then she firmly made her offer, if you do this, I will find your sister for you. These words left Indant completely stunned and speechless. Cris continued to think, of course, I'll also rescue the princess in the process. The system sent a notification. Main quest. Request of the Earth God 22. You know the midterm at the Academy is a school tournament, right? It's a major event. Lead your class to victory. If you succeed, the completion reward is a lucky chance. If you fail, you become a cold corpse. Time remaining 14 days. The midterm exam at Vanda Academy is a tournament between classes of the same grade. The winning class receives a trophy embedded with a red magic stone called the Eye of Fire. If I want to find Angelina, I need that stone initially. Winning this tournament was supposed to be a piece of cake. But the problem is, she turned to ask the students. Everyone knows the midterm is a tournament, right? Then she slammed both hands on the desk and declared, this year, the tournament won't be divided by grade level. She thought to herself, right, it wouldn't be a quest if it were easy. And I just made a big promise to Duke Seraph during the parent-teacher conference. She recalled what she had said, if I win this tournament, I will find Angelina, and in return, you will release Andant. Faced with this unexpected proposal, Seraph questioned, I don't know how much you understand, but can I trust you? Cris pondered for a moment then replied, I always keep my promises. She thought she was so cool back then. But now her face darkened as she thought angrily. I only said that because I thought we'd be fighting against classes from our own grade. Class X is strong, but they still can't compare to the upperclassmen. Hearing this, Nita spoke up decisively. I believe in my own abilities. I'm just not sure if I can beat the upperclassmen. Mako clenched his fist and added, but if that's what you want, we'll do our best. Then he immediately changed his mind. No, we will definitely win. In contrast to their excitement, Angelina clenched her fists. She trembled with resolve. This action caught Chris's attention. Angelina's entire body was burning with fierce determination as she gritted her teeth and confidently declared, I will lead the team to victory. Seeing this, Cris thought to herself, she's incredibly motivated, but the problem is how to make them improve in such a short time. First of all, I no longer heard that familiar, grave and haughty voice. That Donch girl, who was normally always running her mouth, was just sitting there silently this time. Nicktoot turned to her and said, Hey Donch, go and reassure Angelina. I have some brothers who are seniors, you know. When she didn't respond, Nicktoot asked, Donch, are you not feeling well? After a moment of contemplation, Donch replied, well, I heard a ghost has been appearing at the academy recently. This strange comment made Nicktoot extremely puzzled. What kind of weird thing are you saying? She continued, I heard that people even died in these tournaments in the past. Donchi's words startled Nicktoot, who exclaimed, don't say such creepy things. Cris then realized something, muttering to herself, so that's it. The ghost rumors she's talking about aren't just baseless stories. Something must have happened to the twins. A few days later, at the training grounds, countless sounds of clashing echoed. After a training session with Angelina, Nicktoot collapsed to the ground, panting heavily and complaining, I'm so exhausted. Angelina, can we take a little break? Angelina, still full of fighting spirit, replied, I think we need to do about 300 more. Nicktoot asked, don't you think Doncha has been skipping practice because you overworking her? Angelina tightened her grip on her spear and yelled, that's not it. Now get up! Watching from the sidelines, Cris thought, I can't believe she's been skipping practice these past few days. This is not good. We need a full team of 7 for this tournament. Now we short-handed and Pigtails has vanished, which is a huge problem, lately. She's just been wandering around the school garden, as if searching for something. The rain started to fall, making the atmosphere even more somber. After a while, Cris found Donch. She was looking for something. Muttering to herself, Banna, where are you? Cris realized what was happening and thought, it seems her sister, Gabbana Brit, has disappeared. Donchi and Gabbana are the twin sisters of the Brit house. This family of mages is quite famous in the Magic Tower. Gabbana Brit passed away 5 years ago, but no one knew that she has remained with Donchi as a spirit ever since. In despair, Doncha collapsed to the ground, crying in the rain and muttering, where has Gabbana gone? Cris continued to think. I know most main characters have troubled pasts, but I absolutely have to solve this first. Having made up her mind, she stepped forward and asked, Donch, tell me what's happening. Donchi's demeanor suddenly shifted as she turned, and said, Professor, did you come find me just because I wasn't attending class? I never thought you'd care so much about me. In response to this attitude, Cris changed her tone as well. Don't make me laugh. Do you really think I'm doing this for you? This made Donchi extremely curious. Then why? Cris continued, Gabbana Brit, your soul stone. Where did you lose it? This question left Donch completely stunned, her eyes wide. Then a knowing smile spread across her face as she said, wow. I'm genuinely surprised. I knew you were special, but I never thought you could sense the energy from the soul stone. I underestimated you, Professor. Cris cursed inwardly, sense the energy, my foot. You re the one who spilled everything to the male lead in the novel, while crying in his arms. Before Gabbana died in an accident, Danch sealed her sister's soul into a high-grade magic stone, creating the Soul Stone. Because of this, Gabbana was able to continue existing in spirit form. The catch is that she must remain near the stone, and only the person holding it can see her. That stone must be incredibly precious to Danch. But now she has lost it. In her current state, she looks completely lost. Danch sadly covered her face with her hands as she told her story. I woke up and Gabbana was gone. I've searched everywhere, but I still can't find her. Without her, my magic is weakened by half. The situation had now gone too far. Cris shut her eyes tightly, thinking, I should have told her to rest. But there's no more time. The only thing I can do now is solve this as fast as possible. Having made her decision, she turned and said, follow me. For Gabbana's stone to disappear and then reappear, there is only one possibility. Some lucky monster is holding that soul stone, and this will become valuable experience for my students. At this moment in the forest, Cris and the other 3 students advanced inside. Nictoot glanced around and asked in confusion, in the garden. Why did you bring us here when we still have training to do? He remarked, everything in the garden is so gloomy. Is it because of the rainy weather? Bio, who was beside him, corrected him, you mean scary, not gloomy. Go study your vocabulary. Seeing Danx looking like she'd seen a ghost, Bio approached and asked, Danxi, are you okay? You re so pale. Cris walked over to observe the lake in front of them. Thinking to herself that she must have sensed the energy, she turned to everyone and said, prepare for battle. As soon as she finished speaking, the lake's surface suddenly began to churn violently. From beneath the lake, a giant lizard shot up, roaring loudly at them. Its saliva dripped onto the stone slabs, causing them to slowly melt. Witnessing this, Nictoot screamed, the rocks are melting. Angelina warned, be careful, it's acid, don't touch it. Use long-range attacks on it. Nictoot quickly erected a bell-shaped barrier. She turned to call Danxi, but then she stopped when she saw Danx's eyes were welling up with tears. Cris cursed under her breath in frustration. Damn it, this environment is too advantageous for her braided hair and her water magic. But now she's completely lost her spirit. If I were Cris, what would she say in this situation? After thinking for a moment, she said sarcastically, Danx Brit, have you really lost all your courage? She thought back, she had withdrawn from the practice match before. Back then, she did it just for fun and also because of Michael. But what about now? The monster was now staring straight at them, growling but not yet attacking. This monster had swallowed her sister's soul and was almost possessed by her, and now Danxa had to kill it. This threw her mind into utter chaos. Danxi then recalled past conversations, when she and Michael were sitting under a tree outside the academy. She turned and asked, hey Michael, I always feel so frustrated. You know, even though Gabbana is human, everyone says she's a living corpse. People say she'll become a monster one day. No matter how much I deny it, no one believes me. On top of that, some people from the Magic Tower heard rumors about the Soul Stone, so they tried to steal it for research. And that's why I have to get it back at this academy. Looking at the girl, Cris thought to herself. The girl with the twin buns explained that inside Gabbana is the soul of the most powerful demon king that ever existed. But saying that isn't entirely wrong. There's a reason for it. Then she turned and said to Danxi, that monster isn't your sister, because your sister is human, right? These words seemed to snap Danxa out of it, but then her emotions returned to their previous state. Cris crossed her arms and thought, she can use magic, right? If so, what else could she be besides human? Danx pondered for a moment, then suddenly laughed out loud, saying, Professor, you really live up to your name. Just once in my life, I wanted to hear those words, but did you really have to say them right now, Professor? Then she wiped the tears from her eyes, her gaze fixed with determination on the monster before her. She raised her hand to summon a magic orb of water and said, Everyone, I'm sorry for dragging you into my family's problems. I'll definitely repay you all one day. Then she thrust her hand forward and yelled, Hold on to something tight, or you'll be blown away. As soon as she finished speaking, she unleashed a barrage of water bullets straight at the monster. This was not outside of Chris's expectations, causing her to let out a sigh of relief. Thinking to herself, there's no doubt about it, this battle is ours. The scene changes to the next day, in Chris's office, where she is lying on a chair, thinking, thanks to yesterday's monster hunt, our chances of winning the tournament have definitely increased a bit. Those kids had a really tough time taking that thing down. An enemy with that many mana stones inside it obviously wouldn't be easy to defeat. That's a given, even though they've been trained quite well. Maybe it was because of that bandage guy. Anyway, I was quick to pick up all the mana stones and distribute them. Let's just believe they'll be useful. But I still can't let my guard down. As long as I can keep Nictoot's brothers in check, the third-year students are still under control. But the real problem lies with the second years. Because among them is Ran. Ever since he appeared in The Strongest Hero Demon King, as both a rival and a mentor to the main character, He's been a troublemaker who always skips class without permission. But the biggest problem was, while she was thinking, a guy with purple hair walked in from outside and shouted, "Is this the class that took down the monster in the garden? Bring out the strongest one here." He shouted loudly, "Ah, the one and only, the legendary king, challenges you. Of course we will wager our red hearts against each other." Looking at the kid at the door, Cris had a disgusted look on her face, thinking to herself, my god, just how delusional is this guy? Speak of the devil, it seems we'll have to face the antagonist before the tournament even starts. She turned to him and said, "Be quiet. Class has started." Ryan, still acting like a lunatic, pointed straight at her face and said, "Oh, so it's you, the one cloaked in the winds of chaos. Leader of the new generation." This unhinged speech made Cris furious. She gritted her teeth and cursed inwardly, "This brat. Maybe I should teach him a thing or two about respecting his elders." She stood up, about to teach him a lesson, when Nick Toot turned and said reassuringly, "Professor, you don't need to bother with him." Belle chimed in, "He's probably just here to steal our combat power. If you want, I can throw him out myself." Cris thought to herself, isn't it a problem for class to be like this? Second-year students really have too much time on their hands. How dare he talk to a teacher that way? Hearing the sharp words of her students, Cris mused to herself, as expected of my star students, your level is completely different from trash like this. Then she gently flicked her finger, signaling for him to come closer, but Ryan didn't comply, clicking his tongue and saying, "Tesk. You think you can control me with just a snap of your fingers? How arrogant." Seeing her angry expression, he got a little scared and raised his hand saying, "All right, fine, I'll let it go this time." She walked up in front of him and said one word, "Respect." This left him extremely puzzled. She continued, "Speak politely to your teachers." He didn't comply and instead retorted sarcastically, "Who cares about annoying stuff like that?" Her voice grew colder, "A wild thug like you calling yourself the strongest. Don't make me laugh." Her words seemed to strike a nerve, making Ryan startle and stammer, "That's a completely different matter, isn't it?" This was just as Cris expected. She mused to herself, so, whoever conquers the antagonist also conquers Ryan, huh? Then she said, "You are not worth any more of my time. If you understand, then get lost." Despite being told to leave, he still wouldn't go. He clenched his fist and said, "Don't think you can fool me with those threats. Your tricks will never escape these imperial eyes." Seeing that this guy couldn't be reasoned with, she took out a cloak, thinking to herself, "Oh, come on, you have perfect divine power, and you're still wearing an eye patch. Fine, then I'll use the gift I received the other day." The system sent a notification item, "Cloak of the super famous guy has been equipped by consuming a fixed amount of mana. A brilliant light illusion can be activated." Putting on the cloak, she turned and asked, "Can you see this with those eyes of yours?" The system sent a notification, "Aura effect has reached level 10, consuming 100 mana per second." Before he could react, she clenched her fist and threw a punch straight at his face. Just as her fist was about to connect, she stopped and flicked Ryan on the forehead, making him yelp. Then she told him, "Stop trying to act tough and go home." Seeing his embarrassed reaction, Cris was delighted inwardly. "All right, I won, even if the way I won was a little questionable." He immediately turned to leave, not forgetting to leave a parting shot, "You'd better remember me next time." Watching him leave, she smiled to herself, "Haha, that's just the barking of a sore loser." But wait a minute, did I just accidentally give him the motivation to awaken? Scene change. At that moment, she was walking down the academy's hallway when Ijin approached from ahead, waving hello. "Hello, Professor, I heard Ryan caused a disturbance in your class. Oh dear, please accept my apologies." Looking at his friendly expression, Cris gritted her teeth, thinking angrily to herself, "This damn fox-eyed bastard." He continued, "Actually, I was his homeroom teacher last year. To be honest, he never listened to me at all. It drove me crazy. He always thinks he's number one." Hearing these words, Chris's eyes narrowed slightly as she thought, "So it's not a new problem then. That makes sense." Then she changed the subject, making a suggestion. "If you would, perhaps we could exchange information about the students over a meal." She immediately turned her face away and said, "I refuse." This was just as he expected. Ijin offered a small bag, saying, "I thought as much, so at least take this. It's just a small token of my sincerity." Looking at the box in front of her, she wondered, "A lunch box?" He replied shyly, "Yeah, you could call it that." Staring at the lunch box, Cris was conflicted. "According to the rules, I can't accept this, since I've chosen to remain neutral. Who knows if there's poison in it?" With that thought, she returned the box to Ijin, saying, "Besides, I don't even know what's inside." When the box was returned, he said, extremely flustered, "But I went to the trouble of making it. There's no way I'd put anything strange in there." Not giving him a chance to explain, she cut him off. Silence. At the same time, she thought to herself, "This is bad. I need to figure out how to win this tournament quickly." Ijin, standing there, suddenly spoke up, "Is something troubling you? At times like these, I usually find a quiet place to reflect. Hearing these words, Cris froze, thinking to herself, it sounds like simple advice, but why does it feel like he's talking to me and not to Cris? Then he turned back and said warmly, let me share my secret spot with you. I believe you will figure things out. Just follow the map, and no one will find you there. It's the old dormitory that was closed down many years ago. I hope that place can be of some help to you. These words made Cris realize something. She muttered to herself, who on earth is this guy? I just thought he was being vague. But he even mentioned a dungeon that appeared in the original story. Don't tell me he's also